Reverb and how to use it in different situations. So what I've got here is a sort of arena rock song, and I will play a little bit of it for you. So female singer, drums, bass, guitar, piano. Let's go and work with the vocals first. So what I've done is I have two vocal tracks and I've put the effects on a submix track instead of putting each one of these effects on both of these tracks. And I've pulled out the reverb so that we can re-edit and set it up. So for this type of song, I think I want a longer, more theatrical type of reverb.
Someone's circumstance.
Let's turn that delay off
Someone's
for now.
Circumstance.
And for reverb, you can use just about any reverb. I am going to use the fusion field that comes with Mixcraft Pro Studio. And I'm going to put it in the line here before the delay. And we'll hit edit.
Someone's circumstance.
Now, a lot of times when you hear someone's mix, you may hear that reverb when the singer pronounces S's and F's and T's. You may hear that high reverb sound and think, oh, you got too much reverb on that, which that's most likely not the case. You just need to dampen the highs and let the reverb carry out in the mid-range. So we'll do that.
Someone's circumstance. Someone's circumstance.
And Fusion Field is nice because it gives you a visual of what's happening. More damping and the star field dims here.
Someone's circumstance.
So we've got quite a length of reverb there, the decay.
Someone's
Like I'll hit stop and see how long it carries on.
Someone's
That might sound good now, but I know that once I turn on the rest of the instruments and everything kicks in, that's going to disappear a little bit in the mix. So generally, if I'm soloing something and setting up a reverb, I'm going to make it a little bit too much in order to compensate for the rest of the instruments coming in when I unsolo.
Someone's circumstance. Someone's circumstance. Someone's circumstance.
Okay, maybe a little bit less damping.
Someone's circumstance.
Okay, so let's try that with the music.
Someone's circumstance. What it took for them.
It sits in the mix nicely. You can't really tell the reverb is there, but the vocal sounds smoother, nicer, more theatrical. All right, let's move on to guitar. So we'll go to this guitar, and I believe I removed the reverb. Yep. And let's take that delay out of there. So it's completely dry. Let's use a different reverb. Let's use the Acoustica reverb for this. And again, I'm going to put it up before the end of the line here. That's a pretty short reverb for me. That might be a good length for a pop song or something like that. But this is a theatrical, dramatic, theater rock, arena rock type of thing. So you want, for this type of music, you want a big, long reverb. So we're going to raise that. And the high frequency damping on a guitar is not as important as it was on a vocal, because the guitar does not make an S or a T sound. So basically this is going to, the high frequency is going to be how crisp the reverb is for you on an instrument like this. And again, it's going to get buried a little bit when the rest of the instruments kick in, so we want to raise that wet mix to where it sounds a little bit too much when you have it soloed. And then we will turn the delay back on. Let's hear what that sounds like. Let's turn the vocals off. Okay, for me, that might be a little too much on the wet mix. Bring that down a little. That's better. It's more defined, less muddy. Okay, so let's move on to drums. And I'm going to start by saying I don't put any reverb on a kick drum. Just EQ and compression. Now you may hear the reverb on that snare has got a delay on it. I thought that was appropriate for this type of song. Gives it a definite theatrical kind of sound, and how I did that was using the Fusion Field Reverb. Again, adjusting the high damp so that you go between crisping up your drum and not having too much high end, so it doesn't sound like too much reverb. You want that mid-range to carry on. And my decay is sort of short. The attack I've got sort of way out there. And that sort of goes along with your delay here. If you got no delay at all, it's still a theatrical, dramatic sound, but I like, for this type of ballady song, I like that delayed reverb. And of course the dry mix all the way up, and then you adjust your wet mix. Of course, you don't want the wet mix to be louder than the dry mix, so let's hear that with the entire kit. And with the entire song. And it pretty much disappears. You're not going to hear it with every single hit of the snare, and you don't want to. You want it to be highlighted where there's parts where there's no vocal or no guitar or something. You may hear the reverb off of that snare, and it's going to sound dramatic. Like anything, if you hear it every single time it happens, or you hear it constantly throughout the song, it's no longer an accent. It's a kind of gets boring, kind of gets to be an annoyance, I think. So let's go with the piano here and see what I did with that. And I used our Pro Studio Reverb. This is an excellent reverb plugin for piano. In fact, I think it's built from the same reverb that comes right with Pianissimo, our grand piano plugin. So basically, it's a nice full reverb with some low end, because you want to hear that grand piano wood body type of sound out of the piano. And then you have your mix, how much of the reverb, wet mix compared to dry. And there's a bunch of other settings on this reverb which you can play with, but you also have your high cut and your high cut amount, the high cut frequency here anyway, and the high cut amount. What I go for when I put reverb on a piano is to make the grand piano sound like it does in a church, a large church. And I hear that sound when I use this plug-in on a piano. Would be even more so if you make it obvious by raising that mix. It's an even larger church. Now that's starting to sound like you walked in on the rehearsal in an arena where there's no people and the piano player is a 1/16 of a mile across the room. So there you have it, my techniques on using reverb on multiple instruments. I hope that helps.